Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Zoom training session, level 2 for faculty. We're going to spend the next hour and a little bit longer than that, maybe going over specific features on Zoom. My name is Pablo Avila, and I am from the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I have my colleague Oscar Cortez from the center as well, who will be monitoring the chat in this session. This session is being recorded so that we can provide the recording afterwards, not only with every one of you who register, but also with everyone who may not have been able to attend. There is a link, a resource document. Is in putting all of this together, we realized that there were plenty of resources we wanted to share. So we put it all in one single document that you can find via the link on the second bullet point. And I also posted the link in the chat feature right now. That link is publicly available. You are free to refer to that after the session and even share it with colleagues if you want. We will continue to update that link with additional resources as we move along. For the purposes of the first part of this presentation, all the attendees are muted. We encourage you to use the chat feature in the call so that you can post questions, and my colleague Oscar is going to be monitoring that. We also have our colleague Bizard from IT. He will be providing additional information should there be any specific technical question that comes up. Okay. And once again, use the chat feature so that you can post any questions as we move along. My colleague will make sure that we're covering and answering all of those questions during the session. This session, we have an hour and a little longer than that ahead of us. This is level 2, and this will cover specifically what you see on the screen, the setting up of your personal meeting ID, which is an option that's available to all the users. Using Zoom for office hours, we're going to talk about that if that is your preference. And we're going to dive into the breakout groups and the polling feature. Those are two features that faculty have been asking a lot about, and we will end the session with a few tips and recommendations. I mentioned that this is level 2. There is another session, level 1, that covers the basics, which is what you see on the screen. If you want to have um, uh, a more in-depth information about the account settings on Zoom, how to schedule meetings, recurrent meetings, and learn more about the e-meeting environment and features, you might want to consider joining the level 1. There's one more session tomorrow at 12. The link to register for that, if you haven't already, is at the bottom of your screen, and I will also share the Google document in just a moment. So this is level 1 that it's available. This particular session that we're now going to have is level 2. What we will do today, this is going to be a demo session. I will be demonstrating all of these features as we move along. You are encouraged to follow along if you want. However, given that the recording will be available later, you might also want to consider revisiting the recording and segments, specific segments of the recording, to go over more in detail any specific feature that you may be interested in. All of the resources that I am going to reference here are available in the resource document that I have already shared. So we recommend that you look at that. And as I mentioned, the recording will be available. I will be showing you some slides, and these slides are also available in the document, as I will show you in a moment. And then I'm going to be jumping to the browser so that I can demonstrate all of these different features. And again, you're welcome to follow along and ask questions in the chat as we move along. My colleague Oscar will make sure that we raise those questions and answer them along the way. If not, you can also feel free to just concentrate and pay attention to how these features work, and you can revisit the video later if you need to. We wanted to bring up a couple of quick points up front because we realize that there are recurring questions that faculty are asking. The first one is the way that you access your CUNY Zoom account. It's via the website cuny.zoom.us. We're going to take a look at that in just a moment. And that is the entry point for all CUNY users, and you will be using your CUNY login credentials. We're going to take a look at that in just a moment. The Zoom website has a lot of how-to videos, very helpful. and they are all available on the Zoom website, as we will see later. And in case you're looking for a specific feature in the system, more than likely that video already exists on their website. There have been a lot of questions, a lot about cloud storage. When you record in your Zoom meeting, you record to the cloud. Faculty have asked about the storage. IT has confirmed that the storage for faculty and staff is limited. I'm reading off point number 3 in the screen. And each user is recommended to limit their usage to 1 gigabyte only. This is cloud storage. This is important to distinguish between local and cloud storage. Cloud storage is limited. Instead, what it's recommended is to do a local recording. And I can show that a little later. And then if you're looking to have those recordings available to your students, there's a way to share those via a Dropbox folder that it's provided by CUNY with ample storage size, so that way you don't have to consume the space in your own Blackboard course. Level 1 covers specifically that, so I recommend that you check that out if you are able to. And then the last point points out that there's a Zoom email address that the college has. It's zoomhelp@lagcc.cuny.edu. It is a resource in case you come across any technical difficulty accessing your account. I get a lot of questions from faculty, and I'm happy to help them, and I can help them in most cases. But if there is something technical about accessing your account, then it's best to rely on IT, contact them at that email address, and they will get back to you. So let me show you this first, and then we're going to jump straight to the browser. The setting up of your personal meeting room. Your personal meeting room is a feature on Zoom, and it's a personal meeting room essentially that it's always reserved for you, and you can access it with a unique meeting ID or personal link. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a moment. It's always recommended to use this, especially when you want to have impromptu meetings with colleagues, or you want to have a one-on-one with the student. You can access this personal meeting room at any time. There's no need to schedule a meeting as you would regularly schedule your ENG one-on-one classes or your regular classes every week. As you will notice, once we get into the website, the personal meeting ID is a series of 7 digits that resemble almost the phone number. So you can customize that if you want, so that you're able to remember that. You provide that meeting ID or the personal link to someone else that you want to meet with, and they can instantly join your meeting without sending them any other information. Is there any difference between the personal meeting space and a regular meeting space? No, there's not. The only difference will be the meeting ID, which in the case of a personal meeting room will be unique only to you, okay? And we're gonna take a look at that once we log into the website. You're welcome to follow along or to pay attention as I cover that in the screen. We're going to take a look at 3 things. The first one is going to be the personal meeting ID. We're going to take a look at what it looks like and whether you can customize it. I'm also going to show you the personal link. And then we're also going to include some settings in your personal meetings, including the waiting room. Okay. And then after that, we're going to talk about using Zoom for office hours, and I'll come back to this in just a sec. So let me just go ahead and share my screen here. The first thing that I want to share is going to be the Google document. This is the same Google document that I shared via the chat feature. This is the resource document that I'm talking about. I want to draw your attention to this. This is this workshop that's happening right now, level number 2. If you click right here, you will be able to access the slides that I shared a moment ago. So the slides are publicly available, okay? A moment ago, I also mentioned about level 1, which covers all of these features. In case you're interested in joining that, please make sure that you click on this link and you will be able to sign up for that. There is a last one tomorrow at 12 p.m. Okay. There's additional information in this document, which again is publicly available, and you can use this and share this with your colleagues if you want as well. If you scroll down, you will see different resources that you can use at a later point, okay? I'm going to jump straight into cuny.zoom.us. That is the CUNY website to access the CUNY licensed Zoom accounts. And once you get into this page, you're going to go and click on the button Sign In. Once you click on the button Sign In, you will be prompted with this screen. And here's where you're going to put your information. Remember, it's going to be the first name, the last name, and then the last 2 digits of your CUNY EMPL ID, followed by the CUNY First password. And once you input that information, you can go ahead and click on login, and it will take you to your account. Some people have, oops, sorry. Some people have reported that after following these steps, they normally, if you click on your picture right here, you will be able to tell that you are a licensed user in CUNY, and you will be able to see the email address. Some people have reported that even after following these steps, they still go into their personal accounts if they had a personal account. And the first item to mention there is that your CUNY account does not affiliate or merge in any way or form with a personal pro account that you may have had in the past, okay? If you had an account in the past, whether it was free, paid, it does not merge with your new CUNY account, okay? So we recommend signing out completely and then following the steps again. If the issue persists, it normally is recommended to clear the cookies in your browser that may be storing usernames and passwords, and that's why after following that, it's taking you to a personal account. So make sure that you clear your cookies in your browser, whether it's Chrome or Firefox. That normally solves the issue. If the issue still persists, then I would recommend writing to IT, Zoom help at lagcc.cuny.edu, and someone from IT will respond to you and will provide support. Okay. So once you get into this page, and sometimes users may have the page resized in different ways and may look something like this. So it's a little difficult if you have this like this, but if you just expand your browser, you will be able to see the full options, okay? Once you're logging into your account, the first thing on the menu on the left that you're gonna find will be the profile. In the profile, you're gonna see basic information that you have. And then here is where you're going to be able to see your personal meeting ID, as well as your personal link. Okay. Once again, you share this particular information with an individual if you want to have that impromptu meeting, or if you want to meet one-on-one with the student, and you just tell them, let's meet on Tuesday at 7:30. Here's my meeting ID, and then that person will be able to join you without the need to sending them a full Zoom invitation with the passcode and the telephone numbers and all of that. Okay. Besides the meeting ID being unique to you, there's really no other difference in the way that the Zoom meeting will work, okay? It's a very simple and similar meeting space as you have already, I'm sure, be familiar with. If you're in this page, again, I just clicked on my profile, and then if I go right here, I will be able to hit edit, okay? If I hit edit, you will notice that this number resembles the number that I have at the office at LaGuardia. I have customized this so that I am able to remember my number. You are able to do that as well if you wish. You simply go into your profile, and then right where you see your personal meeting ID, you click on the button edit, and then you can change it to a number that you will recognize, that you will remember, right? If that is your option, you're able to do that, okay? Now, if you see right here, under personal link, it's very similar, right? If you do not change by default, I believe it will be a series of numbers and letters, but you can customize this if you go right here and you click on the button customize. In my case, I put my first name and last name so that I'm able to remember this link, and I can give this to anyone else, and they will be able to join me in my personal meeting room. Now, do I need both my personal meeting room and my link? Not necessarily. You can give each other, you can give one or the other to that person that you want to have an impromptu meeting or a meeting with. As long as they have either or, they will be able to join you. And if they go into the Zoom website, let's say that I go into zoom.us, and if they simply go and click on join right here, join a meeting, they will be prompted to enter either a meeting ID or the personal link name, which is exactly what we were looking at just a moment ago. So if you're giving your personal meeting ID to someone, they can go into the Zoom website, enter that number, and they will be able to join you. And that way you don't have to schedule something necessarily there. So once again, you're able to customize this. It's pretty effective if you want to have that one-on-one meeting, and it's recommended to use your personal meeting room when you are meeting with people that you regularly meet with. For instance, in addition to being an adjunct, and when I meet with students, I meet with them on my personal meeting ID when I'm meeting with them one-on-one. When I'm working as a staff member, I normally check in with my team via my personal meeting room without the necessity of having to schedule a full meeting. Um, Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the details inside the personal meeting room. Once again, it's very similar to any other traditional meeting room, with the difference that it has a personal meeting ID. Now let's look at some of those features and some of those settings. If I go into meetings now, I was in the profile. Now I'm going to click on meetings on the left. I think I'm going to find this link that says personal room. And then right here, this will be the settings that I am going to see for my personal meeting room. I can go ahead and click on edit so that I can show you how to switch this, okay? So let's go over this one at a time. First of all, the personal meeting ID, it's the unique meeting ID for this personal space. Again, you can change, which is essentially what we did in the other area. And then for security, I have the waiting room. And this is important to mention because when you have your personal meeting room, you might want to enable the waiting room so that you are able to see and recognize who is trying to join your meeting, right? So what it means is that every time someone accesses your personal meeting room, they will not be able to enter the meeting straight directly. They will be prompted with a message that says, "You are now in Pablo's waiting room, in Pablo's personal meeting room. He will let you in shortly," or something like that.
Question,
And
Pablo.
yes.
So what is the purpose of using the personal meeting room?
You can use the personal meeting room, especially when you're having meetings that you do not necessarily need to schedule a meeting via the meetings page. You can use that, let's say, when you're meeting one-on-one with a student, or when you have regular, let's say, office hours as well, as we will go over in a moment, or where you have regular meetings with another colleague. Other than that, there really is no difference between using a regular meeting and your personal meeting room, other than the meeting ID, which is unique for each user. Okay. In the personal meeting room, I always have the waiting rooms enabled, as I mentioned, because you always want to see who is coming into the door, right? You don't want that person to access the meeting straightforward. The video, what this means is that when you enter the room, the default setting for the host will be to have the video off, but you can always have the option to enable that, and we will see that in just a moment. The same for the participants. You can have the participant join the session by default with their video on. It's important to mention here that only because I may be choosing to turn this off, it does not remove either the host's or the participant's ability to turn on their camera. They always can do that, okay? Only because I'm choosing off does not mean that they're gonna have their cameras off all the time. If they choose to turn it on, they will be able to do so, okay? And then the audio, I always recommend personally to keep it in both because if you choose telephone right here, it means that the visitor will have to join from a telephone device. If you choose only this, the access will only be granted if they're using a computer audio. And then if you don't know, in order to be inclusive of everyone's devices, it's best to allow for either or. So I always have, and I always recommend this option to keep it on both. And then finally, the meeting options. Obviously, because I am choosing the waiting room feature, the enable join before host will not be applicable. What this means is that if you're setting up a regular meeting for Tuesdays at 3 p.m. and you start the meeting at 2:59, if you were to enable this option, there may be students who have already joined the session prior to you, and the moment that you get there, you will see them, right? It's almost like leaving the door open for anybody to come in. But if you do not enable this, that means that the user who's trying to access the meeting, they're going to have to wait for the host, meaning yourself, to have to start the meeting. That's what this option is. Mute participants upon entry. I always recommend that for regular meetings. For my personal meeting room, I do not choose that. This is helpful, especially when you're working with students who or colleagues who may not be fully familiar with the Zoom environment and who may not know how to mute themselves. Sometimes users are not familiar with the system, so it's helpful to mute them from the entry point. But again, this does not mean that they will be muted throughout the session. They can always choose to unmute themselves if they want to. All of these options right here, these options right here, and these options right here are similar whether it is in my personal meeting room or a regular meeting, okay? So there really is no difference there. The only difference is on the personal meeting ID. This is sort of like a personal space and personal meeting ID that I necessarily may not want to share that with all of my students, but I may want to share that with individuals with whom I meet on a regular basis, okay? Then I simply hit save and my settings will be saved so that every time that I start a personal meeting room, I will be able to start a meeting right away, and then I can invite anybody that I want without necessarily scheduling a meeting and sending all of that long invitation that normally users do. So, any questions so far?
Yes, Pablo. Yes, Pablo, there's a question. Can you make everyone a host in a small meeting with your staff?
You do not have the ability to make multiple hosts. There's only one host, and if you want to have others, if you want others to have similar privileges, you can make them a co-host. Okay. So right now, for instance, I am the host and my colleague Oscar is moderating the chat. He's a co-host. I can assign as many co-hosts as I want. And that will give them the ability to perform different tasks on the Zoom as the host is able to. For instance, muting participants, renaming participants, and changing any kind of setting in the call. You are able to have, I believe, as many hosts as you want, but there's only one host that it's always going to be in the call. If you don't want to be the host, if you start a meeting and you're the host, you can give that privilege to someone else being the host, but you will give it up. So I transfer my host privileges from me to Oscar, and then I will immediately become a participant. You can do that, but you cannot have multiple hosts. You can have co-hosts instead, and they will be able to do many things that you as a host are able to do. I say many things because one of the differences will be, as far as I know, with the latest update, a co-host is not able to assign a breakout room member. So that is only something that is reserved for the host. So I can be the host and I can have 5 different co-hosts. But if I want to arrange my breakout room activity for my meeting with my staff or with my students, I will not be able to let someone else do that. I, as a host, I have to do that. Okay. So, any other question?
It was so the other question that came up that I answered in the chat was how do you make someone a co-host?
Once we take a look at the room environment, the meeting environment, we're going to take a look at the participants, and we're going to be able to see the participants list, and I can show you that feature. But I can certainly, if you remind me, Oscar, I'll go over that.
Sure.
Let me go ahead and share. Um, okay. So if you're using the personal and meeting room for office hours, the next thing that we're going to talk about is specifically that. And I wanted to mention up front, bring you back to these slides to show you what the waiting room will look like. So if you are a host and you have enabled the waiting room, whether it is in your personal meeting or on a regular meeting, the moment that means that if a user is entering your session, they will not enter directly. They are waiting in the waiting room, and you will be notified as you see in the call. In the screen, you're going to see a notification, and then it says one person is waiting. In this case, in this example, it was Oscar. The good thing is that you are able to either admit them, meaning let them in. You can remove them. Let's say that you have a user who you do not recognize, you can always remove them. And you can also send them a message. And this has happened in some cases. Students or anybody may be using a cell phone or maybe using someone else's account, and if you don't recognize the name, you can always send them the message and ask them to rename themselves and re-enter the meeting so that you are able to admit them. As far as I can tell, you are able to message the person in the waiting room, but the person in the waiting room is not able to message you back. So let's say that if I have someone in the waiting room, I don't recognize them. I can ask them, who is this? But the person will not be able to respond saying, oh, it's me, Pablo. I think it does not. It only works in a one-way message. So you can ask them to simply rename themselves and rejoin so that you see them with the correct name, and then you admit them into the meeting. Okay. As you can see, if you go into the participants tab, once we do in just a moment, you will see you are the person in the meeting, and then the person in the waiting room will be able to, you will see their names and then you admit them. Okay. Any questions so far?
So the other question was, where was it? So yeah, so let's say if I have weekly meetings with staff, again, goes back to the co sharing. How is there something faster? So what I was going to write in the chat was, when setting up the meeting, Pablo, you can enable alternative hosts. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Okay. Can you see my client there, Oscar?
Yes, I just saw it. Yeah.
What about now? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to talk about how to enable co-hosts when we get to the in-meeting environment. But one of the last things that I wanted to mention about using Zoom for office hours, if you have the client it's optional, and it's highly recommended that if you're able to download the client to your desktop, to your computer, you are welcome to do that. And if you start the meeting, right now it says back to meeting because I am currently in the meeting itself, but there will be a button that says start meeting and start meeting with your personal meeting ID. This is what I was referring to when it comes to starting a meeting at any time that you want. So if you're corresponding with someone and you say, let's check in on Zoom, you know, my personal meeting room, you simply go right here, click on start meeting with your personal meeting ID, and the person will join you right away, whether it's a staff member, a colleague, or a student. And that is how you start the meeting from the client using your personal meeting room for office hours purposes, let's say. Okay. So let me, Oscar, you're able to see my entire meeting space, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So right here, and I'm showing you my entire meeting space so that I can demonstrate these few features. The question is, how do we add multiple co-hosts? Well, if you go right here and you click on participants, normally what you may do is if you go and click on participants or you click on chat, let me just pull this out so that I can demonstrate this. Whether you, oops, sorry. Whether you choose participants or chat, you will have this floating window. In this case, I'm working with a 13-inch screen, so I want to make sure that I maximize my real estate screen. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Merge to Meeting Window. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to have a better distribution of both my thumbnails and my, in this case, participants panel. I am the host, and I can see that here my name, and it says hosts and it says me. My colleague Oscar is the host as well. And you can see the rest of the participants. Let's say that I want to make this colleague a co-host. I'm going to see the more button right next to her name. And then I can choose the option make a co-host. And again, I can have multiple co-hosts in this call if I want, but there's only one co-host. I'm sorry, there's only one host. I also have the option to say to make this participant a host. And if that is the case, Zoom will reassign my host privileges, remove them from my from me, and then transfer them to another colleague. So host, it's only one. Co-hosts, there's multiple ones, okay? So you go into the participants, you go into the more button, and then you click on the assigned co-host button. You can also, as the host or as a co-host, you can also rename participants. And this is important, especially for faculty who may be working with students who may be joining from devices other than their own. They are able to join the session, but sometimes they may not have their names. If you go into their names in the participants tab and you click on rename, you will be prompted to enter their first name and last name, and then you can simply rename, and then you will be able to see that on the screen. Participants are also given the option to rename themselves, but you as the host or as a co-host always have that option on. I also want to show right here, now that we are in the meeting environment, the security icon. And this is something important available to hosts and co-hosts, okay? If you as a participant are looking for this button at the bottom and you don't see it, it's because you are a participant. But you are able to see this as a host. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it, and this will give me a number of different options. And I'm just going to go over a couple of them. The lock meeting means you can think of it as the option to lock the door once everyone is in the class. So that means that no one else will be able to join the class or the session. Even if you have the waiting room available, no one will be able to access the meeting once you have locked it, okay? The enable the waiting room before, when you were scheduling a meeting, you had to say whether you wanted the personal waiting room or not. And you had the option to do that. And then during the meeting, you were not able to rectify that. Let's say that you scheduled a meeting and you did not enable the waiting room, but now you're able to enable it during the call, okay? So let's say that there's been suspicious activity. Hopefully that's not the case. But let's say that you are in a meeting and suddenly you see some suspicious activity, you can immediately enable the waiting room so that you don't let users come straight into the meeting, or you can also lock the meeting. By default, only the hosts and the co-hosts are able to share their screen, and I'm sharing my desktop right now. But if you want your students or you want the other person to share their screen, you go into under allow participants to share their screen, enable that, they will be able to share their screen with you. And then the other options are also self-explanatory. You go into, if you choose the rename themselves, right now it's checked because that means every participant in this call is able to rename himself or herself. But if you don't want them to have that privilege, you can always disable that. But you as a host or as a co-host are always able to rename any participant, whether they are able to do that themselves or not, okay? The other security important feature is the remove participant. If you click on it, let's say that you find any suspicious activity or you have an unwelcome guest in your meeting, if you click on remove participant, Zoom will automatically pull and display the list of all the participants in the call, and then you can simply hit the remove button and then just remove them from the call, okay? Any questions, Oscar?
What is the reason to rename participants?
Normally, when whether you are in sometimes the students or any other user may join from an account that it's not their own. So I at least I've experienced this. Students join the Zoom session and then they may be displaying a different name, and then I don't recognize who they are. And if they don't have their videos available, their videos turned on, then I don't know who that person is. So you can either ask the participant to rename themselves, or you can identify the student and you can rename them yourself. So let's say that Oscar, for some reason, joined the call, does not have his video on, and he does not have his correct name. So I can go into the three dots and then hit rename and then put his name. It's important that you are always aware of who's in your call, especially if you want to keep attendance or some kind of record of who was in the call. That is the purpose of that. I'm going to share once again this is slides right here, and we're going to move on to the next piece. This is the two features on Zoom, the breakout room and the polling feature. Okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you. I'm not going to go over. I'm not going to open an actual breakout room, but I'm going to show you what it looks like, how to set it up, and then I'm also going to do a quick polling so that you can see how it works and potentially use it with your students. So first of all, I'm going to share my whole screen, and then right here I'm going to go into. I have multiple windows here. Okay, so Oscar, are you able to see my Zoom website right now, Zoom account?
Correct.
Okay, so we were in this, once you log into cune.zoom.us, you will land into your account. In order to make sure that we use the breakout rooms and the polling features, we want to make sure that those features are enabled, okay? And the way to do that is you log into your account on the browser, as I did at the beginning of the session. You go into the settings right here, and then in here, you're going to see a number of different features, and I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm only going to cover the two features that we are discussing right now. But actually, level one covers many more of these features, so I recommend that you check that out. I'm just going to do a quick Control F search. Under Meeting Advanced, I'm going to see this option, Breakout Room. And all I want to do is make sure that this is on, okay? So if you go into your browser, whether it is right now or at a later point, and you go into the settings, as I did a moment ago, make sure that you locate the breakout room option and make sure that it's on, okay? Sometimes when faculty do not see the breakout room in the bottom part of their meeting screen, they think that their account is not right, that there's something wrong. The first step is to make sure that you have enabled this feature, and you do it this way, okay? So make sure that this is on. If you see an icon like this, it's because it's off. So all you have to do is turn it on, okay? And the other feature that I'm going to look at right here, it's going to be the polling system. And when I go into polling right here, similarly, I'm going to find that in here, and the polling, I want to make sure that it is on. If it is on, that means that I will be able to see that feature available to me the next time that I schedule a meeting. I've always had these two features enabled. That's what I'm able to see it on my meeting screen, which I'm going to show you right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this right here. Okay. So right now you're able to see my entire meeting screen, correct, Oscar? Okay.
Correct.
So again, you go into the settings to make sure that you have those two features enabled. And as you can see at the bottom, I will be able to see both the polling right here and the breakout rooms, okay? So let's start with the breakout room. If I go ahead and click on it, this is what I'm going to see. The breakout room, a couple of days ago, last week, Zoom released the latest version of the application, which is version 5.3. That version brings a very interesting feature, which is this third option: let participants choose a breakout room. In essence, Before, you created a breakout room, but you always had to assign a student to that breakout room, whether it is manually or automatically, but you had to assign someone by default. Now, this newest implementation allows you to create the breakout rooms and then allow the users to choose which room they would like to go to, and also be able to shuffle between rooms if they want to. In order to fully, I haven't yet fully tested this, but in order to fully enjoy this feature right now, every user in the call needs to have the latest version of the application, which is version 5.3. I'm going to show you a little later how to check for updates in the application. But if you want to enjoy this, you would have to make sure that you have the latest version of the application. These two are the two options that Zoom has always had. The first one is assigned automatically, meaning that if I am able to, if I create a certain number of breakout rooms, I want Zoom to be able to assign automatically, randomly, all of my students into that number of rooms, or assign manually, okay? Let's go ahead and start with this one, and I want to have 3 rooms. So if I add a number 3, a number 4 right here, you will see that the number at the bottom will change. And that means if you want to assign people automatically and you want 6 groups, there will be 1 or 2 people per room. But if you want only 4, there will be 2 or 3 people, and so forth. I'm going to choose 3 for the purposes of this activity. And I'm going to go ahead and click on create. So what I can see right here, and let me expand this so that it's more visible to all of you. These are the 3 rooms that I wanted, and I asked Zoom, can you randomly assign my participants into each of those rooms? That's exactly what Zoom did. I can pull this down, this icon right here, so that I can have a better view of my rooms. And you can do a couple of things. First of all, you can rename. Let's say that you want this to be group A, and now group number 1, and then this, you want this to be group B, and you get the idea. You can rename this in any way that you want. Let's say that you, in the end, don't want 3 rooms and you just want 2 rooms, you can delete one of them. Participants will be automatically shifted to the other rooms. The number right here, it says assign. And currently, if I click on it, I will see that all these participants are inside that particular room. But let's say that I want to do a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down, because when I ask Zoom to automatically populate my rooms, there's 2 options: move to and exchange. And these are self-explanatory, but I want to show you. Let's say that I want this participant to go not from group A to either one of the other 2 groups. I can go ahead and move this participant down to room number 3. And actually, I want to have this as group C. So I moved my participant from group A to group C. Now, what does the exchange mean? What does it mean? If I click on it, Zoom will give me the participants in the other rooms and I will swap them. So let's say that I want to exchange, let's say, friends in here with my colleague, Oscar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap them. One is going to go to the other group and this other one will come to this group. So I have that flexibility. All of this I'm doing in the background, meaning the breakout rooms are not open right now. No one is joining the breakout rooms. I have not done anything other than setting up my groups, okay? Now, let's say that I am ready to open these rooms. This button right here will allow me to open those breakout rooms, and then participants will be able to join. But before I want to hit on open these all rooms, I want to show you the options, because the options are critical. Okay. Under options, the first one that you see is allow participants to choose the room. And this goes back to the 3rd feature that I mentioned that Zoom released with the 5.3 version. If you, in this case, is not applicable because I am already assigning participants to the rooms. I'm not giving them a choice. I'm assigning them directly. This second option, allow participants to return to the main session at any time. This means that if you open up the breakout rooms, the participants will be given the option to return to this main room in case they don't want to be part of that room. It's really up to you how you want to handle that. In some cases, you may want to just keep the students in the breakout rooms until they're done, or if you want them to come back, they can go ahead and give you that option too, okay? So that's what this option means. The third one, it's automatically moved all assigned participants into breakout rooms. What that means is that, and I recommend choosing this option when you're working with students who are not familiar with Zoom. And what this means is that the moment that you open the room, the user will be sent directly into the breakout room without having to click on anything. If you do not check this option, the user will be prompted with the message that says, the host is inviting you to breakout room number 3, click OK to go. And the user will have to click on it. And if the user does not, the user will not join the breakout room. So I recommend always that you enable this because this facilitates the process and moves the user into their respective breakout room without having to click on anything. You have to always manually open the breakout rooms by choosing the option open all rooms, okay? There's always a manual process in that sense, but you can't close the breakout rooms after a certain time. Let's say that you want the breakout rooms to be only for 25 minutes. You can absolutely do that. And that way you don't have to keep time and then say, oh, I gave them extra time or I didn't give them enough time. You can always time yourself and make sure that everyone returns to the main room after a certain time. You can even be notified when the time is up. That way you can, if you're doing something else, you're notified that you need to move on. And then finally, the countdown after closing the breakout rooms is once you click on close breakout room, the user will have a countdown on their screen. Depending on how long you give them here, you can give them anywhere between 10 seconds and 120 seconds. If you give them 10 seconds, the user in the breakout room will see the host is inviting you back to the main room, and it will give you a countdown 10, 9, 8, 7, so forth. The user can click OK and immediately come back to the main room, or the user can simply wait for the countdown to end and he or she will be taken directly by default back into the main room. That is what the settings of the breakout rooms, how they work. I show you the first option, which is Zoom populating by default automatically the users into my rooms. But I want to go back and hit and recreate, and I want to show you what the second option is, assign manually. The settings will be exactly the same, all right? The settings do not change, meaning I still have access to manipulate all of these settings as I explained a moment ago. I can rename or I can add rooms if I want to. I can have as many as I want. Actually, you have up to 49 breakout rooms available in your CUNY license accounts, unless you want 51, but if not, you can have as many as you want. But in this case, Zoom did not assign anyone to any rooms. So let's say that I actually only want 2 rooms. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click on delete this and delete this because I don't need them. I only need 2 rooms. And if I pull this down, nothing shows up because I asked Zoom to create the rooms only and I will populate the names manually. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit into the assign button and now this is a full list of all the participants. Obviously, if you're working with a small, fairly small group, this is doable, but if you have 45 students, probably that's gonna take more time. Let's say that I want my 2 colleagues, Francine and Francine, to be here along with Jose, and let's put Josephine here as well. So I have added them into the breakout room number 1. And if I go into breakout room number 2, Zoom now allows me to see the names who have not been assigned, which is the rest of my colleagues right here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click all of their names. And actually, I want my colleague Rosa to go back here, my colleague Oscar to go right here. So like that, obviously, if you have a manageable size in a class or in a meeting, in whichever setting that you're working with, if you have a small group of people, it is doable. If you have many more, obviously, and you do it manually, that's going to take more time. The rest of the settings play exactly the same. The settings right here are exactly the same. And all I have to do is once I am done setting all of that up, is simply click on open all rooms. I'm not going to do that because the purpose is to demonstrate the settings in here. And then once I'm done, this button will go from open to close breakout rooms. Once I close, everyone will be back into the breakout room, and I will continue with with my session. Let me pause here and ask if there are any questions.
No questions, Pablo.
Okay. That was really a pause for water. But so let's move ahead. So in case there are questions, again, keep posting them on the chat so that my colleague can let me know. So I'm going to, yes, Josephine has a question. Go right ahead. Or if you want, Josephine, you can also unmute yourself. You're free to do that. Yes, please unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
So if I'm using a private account, do I have this breakout room feature
That's a great question. If you're using your private
or not?
account, you do have the option to access the breakout rooms. As far as I know, Zoom allows any user on any account level, whether it's the free non-paid account or the pro account, to use the breakout room feature. But you have to make sure that you go into the settings and you turn that on. One of the common issues that happened at the beginning of the spring semester when we transitioned to distance learning is that faculty were trying to use the breakout room in their basic accounts, but the option was off by default, and they thought that it was a paid feature, but it was not. All you have to do is go into the settings, look for the breakout room feature, and make sure that it's on, and you will be able to use that. So let me go back
Yeah,
and
I
Can you repeat that again, Pablo? Because I think you broke up a little bit.
yeah,
oh, yes.
yeah, you
Uh,
broke up.
so, like I mentioned, you are able to use the breakout room feature, whether it's on a basic account or a pro account that you have for personal use. All you have to do is make sure you go into the settings and make sure that the option is on. And if it's on, you will be able to use it. Yes. Um, Oscar, I think you're able to see my meeting in meeting space, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the next feature that I want to demonstrate, it's now going to be the polling feature, okay? And Oscar, I'm getting a notification that my connection is stable, so in case I get cut off, please remind me and I'll be happy to repeat anything, okay?
Okay.
So as you can see on my in-meeting space, I went over the breakout room. Now I also see the button polling. And again, I cannot stress this enough. If you go into your settings and make sure that the feature is on, you will see it here. If you are running a meeting on your own and you are the host and you do not see those options at the bottom, that's the first step that I will recommend that you do. Make sure that you check your settings. I'm going to check on polling. And in this case, I created something already, which I will deploy in just a moment, but I wanted to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to show you how to create a question as well in advance. This is the type of polling that I will go ahead and deploy in just a moment. When I hit on polling, Zoom is going to show you all of the questions that I have created already, and then if I don't have any, it will prompt me to create a brand new one, okay? So let me stop sharing this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. Now that I have launched the poll, you should be able to see the question right in front of you. It's a simple question. And if you could just let me know and respond, and I will see the responses as they come in. So I see that 4 of you have already responded. And let me go ahead and share once again so that I can demonstrate what this looks like from a host perspective. So as you can see in my screen, once again, I have my poll right here that I have deployed, I have launched. That's the language that Zoom uses. I have the time that this has been available to my participants, and I can tell 5 out of 9 people have voted already, with this being the answer. Once I know that everyone has participated, I'm going to go ahead and click on End Poll. And once I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see is now the full results, and then I'm going to see the button either relaunch, meaning ask the question again, or share the results. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to stop my sharing, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on Share Results. So you should now be able to see the results. This is what everyone said. This is particularly helpful when you want to have an icebreaker activity and then assess, measure in any way the general understanding of your class. I don't recommend using the polling feature for a quiz, because it's not as intuitive, and I will demonstrate why in just a moment, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing these results, and then I'm going to go ahead and share my entire screen once again because I want to keep showing you what these options look like. So this is one question, but let's say that I did not have any question. More than likely, when you hit the polling button at the beginning, you're not going to see any questions. You are going to see the edit though, the edit button. The moment that you hit edit, you will be directly taken into the meeting for that space, okay? This is the meeting, and Oscar, just to confirm, you're seeing my Zoom website right now, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if you go into the Zoom website and you click on the meeting, all the way at the bottom, I am not editing anything. I'm not editing anything. All I'm doing is looking at the meeting information. This is the meeting registration that you filled out. All the way at the bottom, there's a poll area. And in here, I will be able to, as you can see, I already have two polls that I have used in the past, but you will always see the add button. And when you click on the add button, you will be able to enter this question. I'm just going to go ahead and put this test number 3 for the sake of this. And I'm just going to put in here um, just a simple question. What planet do we live in? Now, in this case, and I mentioned a moment ago that although this is a very helpful feature, it doesn't necessarily give you the full flexibility of the types of questions. For instance, right now I am posing a simple question. My options are to allow my participants to respond with a single choice or with multiple choice. So I can simply just put two different options, and then they would have to either choose one or choose multiple ones. But I don't have any other type of question that I can create. For example, if I want to create an open-ended question, I am not able to do that. I've created this one question. I'm going to go ahead and add another question. It's going to be exactly in the same format. Still a single choice or a multiple choice with my question being at the top, and I can add all of these options that I can give my user. So while it is helpful to, assess and pose simple questions where users can simply respond with a single choice answer or multiple choice, it doesn't necessarily give you the full flexibility that I'm sure other tools will give you, like an open-ended question or a question that involves images and things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on delete that, and I'm just going to leave this right here, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And then once I go back to this page, I will now see the new question that I just created. Now, I want to stress something. A moment ago, when I was on my meeting Zoom space, I click on polling, and if I didn't have a question, I would be prompted to edit and add a new one. But it does not mean that you have to do that during your class or during your session. You can actually do this ahead of time, all right? So let me show you that. I'm just gonna go into any meeting so far so that I can demonstrate this. Let me just use this example one that I created earlier today. So if I go into this sample sample meeting, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go to the bottom, and then I'm going to see the poll area right here, and it will tell me you have not created any poll yet. I will actually go ahead and click add, and this will be the same window, the same interface that I showed you a moment ago. And this is a meeting, actually a fake meeting that I created for the future. If you were to do the same in your own class, for instance, you can always create a polling question during the call, or you can also do it ahead of time when you have scheduled a meeting via Zoom. And that way, the moment that you are in the meeting, you have started the meeting. By the time that you hit polling, the question will show up as it showed up to me when I first clicked on it. And that way you prepare your questions ahead of time. That's essentially how it works. Again, although it is very beneficial and it helps you for an icebreaker type of activity, perhaps, I don't recommend accessing this for any type of quiz. And I should have mentioned this as well. Let me go back to this. If I go into adding a question, I see this option right here, anonymous. This means that I can, when I pull out the report, which I'm going to do in a moment, I can set my question to be anonymous, meaning I'm not going to know who answered what, or I can simply not check this off, and that means that the name of the user will be affiliated with the answer that they provided to the question that I asked. Okay. You have to be cognizant though that, and going back to the feature on renaming, if you had a user in your call who joined your session but did not rename himself or herself, and let's say that remained in the call as iPhone because the user was joining from an iPhone, and then you launch a poll and the user responds, when you pull out, let's say you didn't make it anonymous, you wanted to know who responded what, when you look at the report, Zoom is going to tell you user iPhone is responded this to this question. So you have to be cognizant about it and be aware that if you don't have everyone in your class who has been renamed with their first name and last name, it's important that you remind them if you are using some of these features. I want to pause here and see if there are any questions, Oscar.
No current questions.
Okay, so I will move ahead and connected to the reporting of what you saw a moment ago, back to your page. If you go into the option reports and you go into the option meeting, you will be able to see, in this case, these are the reports for meetings that required registration. For instance, the meetings that the registration that you filled out to access this session. But I can also choose the poll report, meaning that I want to pull a report from a meeting where I had a polling question. Now, the important thing here is that these reports are available only for a month. So let's say that you run a poll every week throughout this semester and you want to pull the data from each of those in December when you're gathering your data and everything, you will not be able to find the poll for the meeting that happened longer than a month ago. So you have to be aware of that. If you're pulling out the reports, you're pulling out the reports for whatever happened in the last month only. Okay, and if you wait longer than that, then you will basically not be able to access the data anymore. So that's something important for you to know. Let's say that you want a particular, let's say that I did a polling for this meeting right here. I will simply go ahead and generate. I will go ahead and click on generate, and this will give me a spreadsheet. I don't think I did anything in this particular session, but it will basically give you an Excel sheet with your question and the answer. If it was anonymous, it will say anonymous. If it was not anonymous, it will give you the name of the user and the respective answer to that question. So I think I covered all about breakout room and polling, but I want to stop now for questions. Oscar.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the breakout room. One, you have to set that up for each class that you have. There's no such a thing as if you have the same class for the entire semester and you want to keep the kids in the same group always, can you have it recurring so you don't have to set it up every time you teach?
That's a great question. You can create the breakout rooms also in the scheduling interface, as I will show in just a moment. And if you create a recurring meeting and you set up those rooms in advance, then you are able to maintain the same. Let's say that you always have team 1 through team 3. You can always set up those rooms ahead of time, and they will be, the moment that you hit on breakout room, every time that you are in that meeting, if you schedule it on a recurring basis, you will always see the same rooms created by default. Unless you are choosing to add users with a specific user ID, like in this case, all of your students should now have a CUNY login credential. You can also pre-populate that. So let me show you that. If you go into, I'm going to show you my screen. I'm going to go into my meetings and I'm going to schedule a meeting. And I'm just going to do this fairly quickly for the purposes of this demonstration. I'm going to put this in my class, which is, let's say, ETF 101. So if I go ahead and choose this and then I create a recurring meeting, let's say that it's going to happen weekly on Thursdays, and then
That,
at 1 p.m., right? So I'm just going to go ahead and create a recurring meeting, and then further down, I will see the option breakout room pre-assign. And if I check this option, I will see two things. First of all, I will see the option to create rooms and import from CSV. If I click on create rooms, I will be able to add, let me just move this out of the way. I will be able to add the rooms from the very beginning. So I can go ahead and click, I want this to be group A, and I can go ahead and click add and group B, and you get the idea. If I go right here, and I can just put this to group B, and that means that all of these groups are going to be available for all of these recurrent meetings. Okay, I just hit enter and created this too quick, but all those rooms will be available the moment that I start each of these meetings. And if you want, the import from CSV will allow you to import the usernames of the students, and you are able to pre-assign them if you want. However, you have to be cognizant that the student has to enter your meeting with that user ID. So let's say that you're assigning me with my CUNY login credentials to group number one, but that day I forgot or something happened and I decided to join with my account that's with my Gmail address. I will be able to join without any problems, but I will not be pre-assigned to that breakout group because Zoom did not recognize my Gmail address and corresponded it to the CUNY login credential that you originally sent. So you have to be cognizant of that. All of your students would have to log in with their CUNY credentials if you want to pre-populate names. But the breakout room assignment, the room label, you're able to set those up from the very beginning and have them on a weekly basis if you want for the entire semester.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let me just, any other questions, Oscar?
No questions.
Okay, so we looked at the breakout rooms and the polling feature. We want to end with some final recommendations. It's always recommended to turn off your camera when starting a meeting. You can turn it on manually. This is just a general recommendation. If the students decide and choose to turn their cameras on using a virtual background, as some of the ones that you're seeing on my background, is always recommended. In the Google document, there is a link to a Flickr page that LaGuardia has put together with images that you can download and use for your own purpose. If you're using your personal meeting room for office hours, it's recommended that you enable the waiting room so that way you know who's coming into your meeting space and admit them if you want to. And consider asking your students to have a physical notebook. It's always helpful for them to take notes on a physical notebook. I'm sure many of you do, but it's always important as a reminder. And finally, update your desktop client, which I didn't do, but I'm going to do right now. And if I go into my desktop client, I'm going to share my, I'm gonna go right here. And so this is the desktop client that I have. Oscar, you're able to see my screen and my desktop client, correct?
Yes.
So this is the client that I have downloaded. Again, if you're able to download the application into your computer, into your device, it's recommended that you do. In the Google document, there's a link to the download center from Zoom, and you will be able to do that. Whether you're working on a Windows or on a Mac, right now I'm working on a Mac, the system will be the same and will display your picture on the top right if you've enabled one. And then right here, you will see check for updates. And when you go and click on check for updates, Zoom will give you the updates that you need. In this case, I don't have any because I have the latest version, which is 5.3, 5.31. And if you do have an update, you will be prompted to follow these steps and update your client. It's always helpful to do that, especially if you are looking for a new feature or if you need additional security features that Zoom has released. So I think that's about it, unless there are final questions, Oscar.
Nothing yet.
Okay, so once again, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. We hope that this was helpful in any way. Remember that this session is being recorded, and I will make sure that I share the link. It's going to be posted on YouTube. If you register for this session, you will receive an email from me either later tonight or tomorrow with a link to it. I recommend that you revisit specific segments if that's what you want. And after that, if you have any questions, if it's a quick question I'm able to answer, you can always email me. If you have a technical issue with your account, please make sure that you contact IT, Zoom help at lagcc.cuny.edu. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Oscar, for your moderation, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you.